Hello everyone. In this video, we're going to discuss the proposal genre. And specifically, we're going to talk about this especially in relation to your final project in our class, because you'll be composing a professional proposal that addresses a way that you believe you can solve either a problem or you see an opportunity truly to make an impact and an improvement in your intended career field. And so as we go through this, my suggestion is to make sure you're taking notes on this of how you might adapt and apply some of the details to your own project. I also recommend referencing back to the chapter in your textbook that discusses proposal writing, especially because they give some excellent examples of proposals and how to implement some of these features and these moves that we're going to discuss in the video. But to get started, let's go ahead and just discuss what a proposal is. Truly, proposals surround us not only every day, but also especially in the workplace. Whenever we see a way of positively making an improvement in the workplace, a lot of times we start with a proposal. And so proposals themselves, they truly identify a problem or an opportunity, and then they identify and provide a very detailed plan for solving or taking advantage of an opportunity. So essentially it's you outlining, here is what is happening that I see as problematic or I see as potential to improve upon, and here's how I actually see us making that happen, how we could potentially impact the situation. And so to get started, when we're thinking of creating a proposal, it's truly important to think about how we might plan out, one, gathering information and also planning out our ideas. And so to begin, it's important to think, what are you trying to accomplish with your proposal? Why are you writing it? And then who are you going to address it to? Specifically, not just any audience member who's potentially at the organization, but who can actually say yes to your ideas and make sure that they get implemented. And then what information will I need to share with that specific audience? So are they already very informed on the issue, or are they possibly not aware that it is creating potential problems in the organization? How detailed do you need to be to make sure that they fully understand your proposal? And then last but not least, when and where will the proposal be used? Is this something that is going to be presented formally or potentially informally during a brief discussion? How do you anticipate seeing this unfold over the timeline in the organization? These details are ultimately going to impact what information you include in the proposal as well. And then in relation to thinking about our specific class and your specific project, developing research is going to depend on what you learned from your informational interview. So a good part of your informational interview may have been focused on the specific problem you plan to address in your proposal. And if that's the case, you may have a good amount of information already. However, now it's important to start identifying, what do you feel confident in knowing and having good information on? What do you think you're going to need to further research? And then going that additional step of seeing what else has been said. So doing some internet searches and seeing what other proposals already exist on this topic. Maybe it's not for the specific company, or maybe it's not even for the specific field, but that will give you ideas of maybe how you want to adapt some of those moves and even some of those ideas into your own proposal, and really help you establish the content, the information that you're then going to discuss in the proposal. So truly identifying with your plan, what are you writing about and who you are writing to? And then going into, what information do I need to know? What information will I actually include in my proposal? Those are two pivotal steps to begin this project. Then once you've gathered that information, it's truly time to start organizing and drafting your ideas. And so on this slide, I have several of the basic features of a proposal. Some of these are going to be requirements for your project, while other ones are going to be optional depending on your specific topic. So you'll see we have everything from introducing the problem and the solution to describing the current situation, the current circumstances surrounding that subject, to your step-by-step plan of how you could potentially solve the issue. Then at times we'll have graphics, graphs, illustrations to help further unpack the subject. You'll discuss the qualifications, so either the personnel or the company that will be involved in implementing your proposal, as well as the cost and benefits of implementing the proposal. And finally, you might provide a budget that itemizes the cost if applicable. So we're going to start by breaking down the key aspects that you will be required to include in your proposal. The first of that being the introduction. So this, at a minimum, every single one of you should discuss the subject, the purpose, and the main point of your proposal. And so for this, it's truly thinking about what topic, what subject are you writing about? Then you're going into your specific purpose. So what do you hope to accomplish by presenting this particular proposal to your relevant audience? And then finally, your main point. What are you truly trying to accomplish? So in addition to that purpose, it's adding on to, if your proposal is accepted, what could positively happen, okay? And so thinking more about that, stressing the importance of your subject is another common move that we often see within the introduction section here. So really thinking about, why is it important not only to address the issue, but possibly to address it now? And then going into any relevant background info. This sometimes will occur in the introduction, or it could occur in that section we're going to discuss next. And then last but not least, you might preview how you're going to organize the proposal. So you might discuss whether you're going to highlight specific main components early on, if you're going to provide that background information, and then ultimately end with the overview of the benefits of implementing your proposal. You can kind of give us a preview of that organization as well. And then the current situation is another component that will be required for each one of you. And this section is truly about defining and describing the problem. So if you're planning on pitching a proposal that's going to address a specific problem, you need to first tell us about that problem. So hypothetically, if I was going to present a proposal for creating a communal office space for faculty here at Lincoln Land where we could eat lunch together or collaborate more often, I would first need to describe the problem, so the lack of a space, and then go in depth about the issues that are involved with that leading to the ultimate problem. And so that goes into the causes of the problem. Why is that space not available? Would be something I could potentially describe. And then the effects that will occur if the problem is not addressed, right? So if we don't listen to your proposal, what could truly happen? So if my proposal was not accepted to create a communal office space, ultimately this would lead to further disconnect among faculty in the department, or lost opportunities to innovate and further strengthen our pedagogy in the classroom. Things like that are what you could ultimately emphasize here. Now, truly, when we think about this section, a question I'll often get is, how long does this need to be? And it really depends on your topic and your audience. So if you know your audience is already greatly familiar with the problem you're addressing, then you might briefly cover some of these points in a few paragraphs. Where if this is something that the audience who could potentially make a change with your proposal is not familiar, you may need a more extensive section that's really breaking down the problem, the causes, and the effects in this section as well. So it's very much dependent on your unique situation. Then after you go through and unpack the problem itself, you're going to start presenting the project plan as the next component. And this is really your step-by-step method for solving the problem. Essentially, it's your solution. So you're going to start with an introduction. You're going to explain the problem that exists, and then in this section, you're telling us what you want to happen to effectively solve the problem. And here it's going to be really important discussing how, so that's step by step, a clear breakdown of your solution, and then why that is the best way to go about doing this. And so when we think about composing this section, to start off, you want to have a clear section that just identifies your solution. So stating very clearly, here is how I plan to positively impact the problem that I see occurring. And in that first portion, this is also where you can give a name to your solution. So the title of a product, if you're pitching it, or a specific process, you get to name it since this is your proposal. And then after, you're going to have a much more in-depth section where you break down the major and minor steps. Essentially, this is your step-by-step part where you're going to first identify the major step that needs to occur. And then immediately underneath that major step, you're going to give us all the smaller details of what is included to accomplish that major step. And then you'll go on to the next major step, followed by a description of all the minor steps that are involved with that major part. And within each one of these, it's really good to go back to why each step is needed. So after identifying the major step and explaining the minor points that are included, emphasizing why that step is so important. So why is this necessary? What is this going to help us accomplish? And then you're going to end by getting very specific and identifying the deliverables and the outcomes. So essentially, what goods or services should we expect to see by the end of this proposal being implemented? What should actually happen as a result of your plan? And then the final section that you will have, or I'm sorry, not the final section, but the next section that you'll have is the qualifications. So this is truly dependent on you unpacking who is involved in successfully implementing this proposal, and that could be specific individuals or a company overall. And within that description, not only do you want to identify who's involved, but you also want to really emphasize why are these the best individuals for the job. So a lot of times we'll see this in proposals where maybe more than one company is competing for the opportunity to implement a solution. They want to emphasize their qualifications as best as possible to make sure that they get that work. For your proposal, this can be clearly explaining whether or not you would be involved with potentially implementing your solution, or if you see this as something that's possible for the organization on its own, and identifying how they could make that work. Since you are not in the field yet, this is one area that will be slightly different than what we'd expect to see once you're working in your field presenting a proposal. So I'm willing to be a bit more flexible here as long as you are clearly outlining who is involved and why that is appropriate for the situation. And then we go to the cost and benefits. And like it sounds, this is really where you're going to wrap up by describing the overall cost of your proposal and what potential good that's going to lead to. This is also what truly serves as the conclusion for the proposal. So while we have that introduction and the body that explains the situation in your potential solution, the cost and benefits is where we wrap up and we clearly conclude this final portion. And so because of that, you want to have some very specific language here indicating that you're ending the proposal. So things like, let us conclude by summarizing the cost and benefits of our plan. That's very clear cut that this is my conclusion, we're leading to the final points, here's what I'm going to discuss now. And so the cost, you just want to be very direct with this part too. So our budget shows that this proposal would cost X, Y, and Z. We anticipate this proposal costing this amount of money. And then really emphasizing the benefits by implementing this proposal or by creating this project, by facilitating this process, X, Y, and Z will happen. And this should truly tie back to, again, the values of the individual you're pitching to. Why will they want this? How can you persuade them to consider your proposal by truly emphasizing the positive benefits that it could have? And then finally, discuss what will happen next. So if your proposal is accepted, what are the next steps? What could the future look like for this organization? And then we always want to conclude by thanking the readers. And very similar to some of the other professional letters we've written in our course, you're going to include your contact information here. So thank them for their time, thank them for the opportunity for pitching ideas, and then include your contact information so they can follow up if needed. Okay, now that we've discussed the overall content in the proposal, I want to end with a few quick points about how we would form the style and design of these documents. Proposals are truly dynamic genres in the technical communication field. You have a lot of flexibility with both how you actually structure content in the proposal. We'll see everything from standard documents to column views to a lot of other details that are included that we'll discuss here. But then also it's very important to be mindful of the language. And so we'll start there by just discussing the importance of concise, clear language. It is important to be very specific and very clear in your writing, and making sure that we don't have grammar, punctuation, spelling errors throughout the document. On top of that, you need to think about your specific subject and your specific audience. If there's unfamiliar terms, you'll need to define those. You'll need to unpack them, possibly provide an explanation or an analogy to make sure your audience is familiar with the ideas you're discussing. And then identifying keywords. So again, thinking back to your audience, what is valued? What type of tone do you want to convey in your document? And then being mindful of how your language does that. Now, when we're thinking about the design, it is appropriate in these type of, in proposals truly, to include graphs, tables, charts, if applicable. So if you are discussing specific features of your subject where it would be appropriate to have a table to make it much more clear-cut and easy to navigate, then by all means include it. You might have a graph or a chart, and on the flip side, we can also have images to reinforce the important points too. And you could see this in several of the examples in your textbook, so I suggest looking back there. And then finally, another very cool aspect about proposals is that we have sometimes what's called reader notes. And so that's when we have content pulled apart on the side of a document and really highlighted, whether in a specific text box off to the side, or sometimes it's slightly larger font or bolded font, where we might pull a specific quote from the proposal that's super important that you want to make sure you're emphasizing. Or you might highlight key points, like key parts of a product you're discussing, or key steps that you want to emphasize a bit more. And this just helps an audience's attention be drawn to the important details of your proposal. And then also thinking about guiding an audience through your document, so including page numbers. This is especially helpful when we're discussing the proposal as a group, so referencing a certain page for everyone to turn to during a meeting. And then also headings. So we want to have those bold headings that identify the different parts of the proposal. This again just helps us navigate the content. So we might have one where we introduce the overall topic, but then we go to a how does it work or my solution. We have those bold headings to help guide the primary sections in the document. And then last but not least, also thinking about how you want to use color effectively to make your document pop, to convey a certain tone, and really to guide readers through the content. Now, this should not be done extensively to where it becomes distracting, but maybe having a title in a certain color or a header up top that pops, or even using a different color for your headings throughout the proposal, or images that are colorful. These can be really positive ways to help organize content and truly to make it more attractive. Now, those are some of the key aspects to think of as we're considering the proposal genre. We will talk much more about your specific proposal and how you're going to compose that during our next class session. So please move forward with the other assignments for our class, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Thank you so much.